Hello everyone, welcome to Rappler Talk. I'm P. Renada, Rappler Senior Reporter. It's been 30 days since President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. took helm of the country and at the same time began serving as the country's Agriculture Secretary. So today we want to know more about his first 30 days, his first month as Agriculture Secretary, especially with all of the challenges facing him, including the rising cost of food and basic commodities. Today we're speaking with Undersecretary-designate Christine Evangelista, who is also the spokesperson for the Agriculture Department. Thank you, Christine, for joining us.
Thank you, Pia. Good morning.
Okay, so first 30 days, it's a very important milestone for any president, any cabinet portfolio, in fact, because it's like in a way it kind of shows the direction of the department of the country. So we'd like to ask, how would you describe the first 30 days of President Marcos as the chief of the Agriculture Department?
We started by giving a situational report. Situational report, not accomplishment report. There's a difference because situational report also meant that he also wanted to know what are the problems. So it's not only what you're doing, but what are the problems, what are the challenges, and with what the department has been doing, what is the impact? So it's an assessment of things that are being implemented and also ways forward because there is a specific target. He was very particular about increasing production. So now it's a review of all the programs we're doing and which one of that actually leads to that direction of increasing production. And then second, you're also looking into how to increase the income of the farmers. And when you talk of farmers, syempre it's broad. You have the farmers, you have the fishers, you have the livestock raisers. And he's very, very, very much aware of concerns. I think it was raised to him even before. So it's a matter of looking for what program has to be strengthened and what should be prioritized. So it's I think he's very hands-on. And he really wants to be able to solve problems that have been perennial also as far as agriculture is concerned.
So, how many meetings has President Marcos had with DA officials, and what does this say about his leadership of the department?
Well, as far as something that is like an EXICOM, we've had 3 already. So we've started with the accomplishments of the DA and the situational reports, and eventually in the other meetings we've discussed the programs that we have. So we also have a daily communication with the Office of the President to see, we give reports on what's going on and what are the things that are the steps being taken, especially in reaction to any news that we see and any concern that's being raised from our stakeholders. So meetings, 3 meetings on an EXICOM level and daily communications.
Who's your liaison pala in Malacanang?
Well, it's usually through USEC Leo Sebastian as our Chief of Staff as well. So we course it through USEC Leo.
But in Malacanang, who is he talking to?
In Malacanang, during the meetings, we have ES with us.
So you mentioned 3 meetings. So this comes out like every week nakikipag-meeting siya. But you also mentioned that the Chief of Staff, si Undersecretary Leo Sebastian, meets more often with him. Is this like an in-person meeting or is it just phone calls?
I'm not really sure, but based on our meetings with USEC Sebastian, it's obvious that they communicate regularly. And during the EXICOM, every now and then, the President would make mention about something they've discussed before.
Okay. So far, has the President issued any order or any written directive as Agriculture Secretary?
A written directive, not yet, at least for my level. Okay. What we have right now is an assessment, a full assessment of the programs. And then maybe from there on, we will have the directives and the special orders and what have you that a regular secretary does.
So what has the morale of the staff been, especially as you mentioned, it's the first time that the President has actually taken leadership of the Agriculture Department?
I think we're hopeful that the sector will be given the importance and the priority that it needs. And that will also help us because there are times, coming from field work activities, which I did before, there are times that, we know that we have certain programs that might not have enough support to be able to help a lot. So like if we're looking at cooperatives, you look at the number of how many cooperatives there are, how many farmers there are, and then you try to see the budget allocation you have for a certain program, and you know that the impact will just probably, 1%, and then you just hope that next budget season it's going to be budgeted again, so another 1% will be held. So now I think that since the president knows the importance of agriculture, things like that can be addressed, and there are other ways of engaging other government agencies as well. It doesn't have to be only DA, because there is a way probably to get DILG involved, or even DSWD. There are points of convergence that can be done to make sure that our sector, which is of course the agri sectors, our farmers, our fishers. When you say that the poorest of the poor is a fisherman, it doesn't only mean it becomes a problem of DA, but then you can bring in DSWD. Then you can bring in DILG also.
Has he mentioned that, the budget? Because I'm sure right now there are preparations for next fiscal year's budget, and he'll be involved in that, diba, as DA Secretary. So has he said anything about a target amount or how much bigger it should be for next year?
I think the reason why we are thoroughly assessing our programs is also to see the additional budget needed, although the figure hasn't been discussed yet, because the targets has to be set, and it's also going to be based on where we are right now. So if I have a budget of this amount and I'm only getting to help this much people, but it's working, the program's working, then we take off from there. So I think a figure with regards to budget will come after this thorough assessment.
Okay. With regards to this assessment, no, it's already been mentioned in press releases. You've also spoken of it before, that one of the things that President Marcos wants assessed is the rice tarification law. And you've also said that you've been checking its impact on farmers, and also an interesting idea to kind of allow the National Food Authority to again import rice, which is not allowed under the RTL. So, why would there be a need? Like, what kind of role, or why would that be revisited again? The need for NFA to re-import rice.
Well, that part is being studied in the same manner that everything else that has to do with the law is being studied as well, including the RCEF and other features of the law. Because it's not only about importation when you talk of NFA. It's also about buffer stocking now. And when you say, what is the role of NFA now with RTL, and if it's buffer stocking, then we have also to look into how to strengthen NFA, because when you say buffer stocking, we're also leading to NFA buying the palay of our farmers at a good price when the palay prices drops. So that in itself is a significant role. So the part that NFA could no longer do importation because of RTL is just one of the many things we are looking at as far as reviewing the impact. We know that there are also concerns from the farmers that they say that it did not help them, or it made them, they had challenges and it made things difficult. So why is that so? Maybe the RCEF has to be strengthened, because the RCEF, which is part of the RTL, is supposed to enhance their competitiveness. If that is properly done, then our farmers will not be, in a situation wherein now they're saying that it's not working for them.
So the conclusion so far on the reassessment for RTL is the conclusion that RCEF is not working? Do we have an idea of what the recommendation is at this point?
Well, right now we have not reached a conclusion. It is being studied, but looking at the features of RCEF, it is practically supposed to be the solution to all the concerns that will arise and could arise because of RTL. So how to strengthen RCEF, how to be able to create an impact based on the budget allocations also that was stipulated in the law is something being looked at. So too early to come up with a conclusion right now, but thorough assessment and stakeholder engagement also, because our farmers, the way they see things is very important to bring into the discussion to make sure that it's really working, or if it's not working, what has to be done.
What has the president actually said about the rice tarification law?
Well, his marching orders really is to study it.
Study it pa lang.
Yes.
So, wala siyang indication na, maybe we should amend it or repeal it. Walang ganun.
Wala, it's study it.
Just
Study it. Study the negative and the positive impact of RTL.
Okay. Another thing you mentioned was the possibility of entering into a government-to-government transaction for fertilizer, to purchase fertilizer. So, was this an idea that the president came up with, and what were his thoughts on this initially?
That came up during the meeting because we are trying to find a way to lower the price of fertilizers. No? It's one of the solutions that was thrown, and when we have a meeting, that's the whole in the field. People come up with solutions and then recommendations, and that was one of it. The idea is to find a way, because if the prices of fertilizers are always, dependent on the global price, then that seems to be something we do not have control of. But if it's going to be government to government, then maybe we can get a better price. And then by doing so also, for this particular situation, it's cutting the middleman. But we have to make sure that we are ready as far as the distribution of the fertilizer is concerned also. Because, the trader that came into play as far as fertilizer also took care of distribution and other aspects. So that is being thoroughly studied. We are looking at the capability of DA and all the other agencies under DA to make sure that we have a warehouse, we know how to do the distributions ourselves, because that will probably cut down the cost of the fertilizers. Hence, then we can give more. Because if you budgeted 3,000 for a farmer, and before it was done at the time that fertilizers was less than 1,000, now that it went to 3,200 and now it's 2,800, then it's being compromised. The 3 bags of fertilizer that was supposed to be given to them now is just 1. So how to bring down the cost is very important, to also maintain the yield, the production yield that was gaining momentum.
Okay. Do we have an idea of how much fertilizer we're going to buy from another government, what the budget is that we're allotting for this program, and where we would be buying the fertilizer from?
I don't have the figures yet because it's also being computed now. And with regards to the countries, we are looking at China, Indonesia, and UAE. So we are looking at the prices of fertilizers coming from those countries, and also doing a cost structure of fertilizer now to see how much the landed cost will be, how much it will entail, the retail cost, the dealer's price. No? So those are the things we are looking at.
Why these countries?
They've been one of the sources of fertilizers even before, when it was private sector bringing them in. And the quality definitely is also taken into consideration. And we have a team for that who makes sure that the efficacy of the fertilizers we are getting will give us the yield that we want. So that's one. Second is the price is also important. There are some areas that are more pricey than the others. Third, I think, is logistics. If you get your fertilizer from a very far country, you can just imagine the cost of bringing it to the Philippines. So those are the things that has to be taken into consideration before deciding which country we will buy from.
Okay. Do we have deadlines for this? Like, when do we aim to bring in the purchase fertilizer? When do we aim to have a final decision on the rice tarification law?
The final decision on the rice tarification law, I don't know the timetable, to be honest. But as far as the procurement of fertilizers is concerned, it's very urgent because based on the inputs I got from our rice group, if we are looking at planting of October, then we need it immediately so that our farmers will be able to put the necessary fertilizers come 45 days after they plant. There's a certain schedule of when to put fertilizers after you plant it. And of course, that's more technical. But again, having the fertilizers here at the right time, in anything for that matter, if you think about it, if you're talking of importation, timings are very important.
So safe to say, like, dapat before September or by September?
Ideally.
All right. Then you also mentioned, a central marching order of President Marcos is to increase production for rice, corn, all kinds of agricultural products. So you also mentioned farm to market roadmap for that, literal roadmap for that. But there have also been criticisms from groups, no, that farm to market road now it's prone to corruption because it's another infrastructure project. How can you assure Filipinos that the farm to market road, number one, will be effective, and because it's been done before, diba? Like FMR has always been a program pursued by all administrations. But also at the same time, how do you assure people that hindi siya magiging source of corruption?
Well, the master plan, which entails a map, a very detailed map, I think is going to be one deterrent, because that will also reflect how long, how many kilometers is expected as far as that FMR is concerned. Mm-hmm. So there cannot be any shortcuts. So when we plot together with the engineering team of DA, who is really specializing on FMR and deals with DPWH as well. Mm-hmm. When we plot the FMRs based in that map, then that is what is going to be expected. And it's going to reflect from what point to what point is that road that we will be making. So I think that in itself solves an issue on transparency. And at the same time, farmers who will be benefiting from that FMR know for a fact that it is their farm that's going to be taken into consideration when we plot where it's going. The first part is to find the production areas, the priority production areas. And then the area where it's going that leads to the market. That will also mean that it can be an economic zone. So the LGUs also, if they have requests for FMRs, then it will have to be aligned with that master plan that we have also to be vetted, I think, and we are intending to give copies to economic managers also.
Will the public get to see this map, this network?
Well, right now, I don't know if it will go that far, but we will wait. But I think that is going to be something of interest to the public, especially our farmers. Yeah. So it's right now we're having a lot of stakeholders meeting. Consultations are very important. We want to make sure that whatever programs we're going to continue to implement or whatever new programs that we will be bringing in is something acceptable and beneficial to the stakeholders.
Yung farm to market road, no, is there going to be a timeline for this?
Well, it's infrastructure, so medyo mas matagal yan, when it comes to farm to market. But first and foremost is the map. That is the anchor of all things. No? It has to be anchored on a map. And then, if it's going to be part of a catch-up plan, we have to take into consideration how long it takes to have an FMR. I'm not privy to how, I was never involved in FMR in DA, so I don't know how long and the whole process of it, to be frank with you. But there are areas that we've seen are priority areas because our farmers have a difficult time bringing down their produce. It's not just talking about the accessibility of a trader who owns, a truck to be able to buy the produce of our farmers. But since we're trying to capacitate our farmers also, we're giving them trucks, then they have to have a road so that they can bring the produce themselves.
So, Masagana 99, it was a program that was praised by President Marcos and his sister Amy, but also criticized for its failure to implement a sustainable credit program for farmers. Lots of banks were left bankrupt while farmers were left in debt. But at the same time, for a while, it was able to increase production of rice. So, President Marcos has spoken of reviving this program, but in a different form. Something proposed by the last Agriculture Secretary, si William Dar, talking about Masagana 126, 150. And so in what are the updates to this? Has President Marcos taken steps to implement this? How different or similar will it be to the Masagana 99 of his father?
Well, the Masagana 150 is about increasing the yield. No, we are pushing that for every hectare there will be 150 kavans produced. So that is in the part of the marching order about how to increase the yield of our farmers. It is still being thoroughly discussed because now we have ACPC, the Agricultural Credit Policy Council. Even before, it has been giving loans to our farmers at zero interest. And And I think there's a way now that it also involves rural banks also to ensure that the loans are being paid, and it is also something with the terms that is realistic based on our stakeholders. If you think about it, our stakeholders, most of them will have a difficult time getting a loan from a commercial bank. That is where ACPC comes in. And we have programs. We have a loan program for the youth. We have loan program for farmers with startup capitals and all that. So at least the credit side is being addressed. And should we do the Masagana 150, we have to make sure that the things that were not addressed before will now be given into consideration to make sure that sustainability, that's important. We cannot start something and not be sustainable. So that is part of our recommendation as well.
Will the Masagana 150 involve also combining high-yielding seeds for rice with fertilizer? Because I think that was also another aspect of Masagana 99, which led to high production, but also was criticized because daw parang it made the farmers dependent on a certain type of fertilizer, a certain type of variety of seeds. So will that aspect also be in Masagana 150?
The type of seeds and the fertilizers is being studied by our rice group, because again, sustainability is very important, and accessibility to these seeds and fertilizers as well. It also would be entailing good irrigation, because that is something that's very important when you talk of production. So there's a lot of factors involved in producing. And it's not just the type of the variety of the seeds, but definitely even mechanization is also part of the plan, the operational plan. I think that will be discussed soon with the details, and we'll let you know.
Okay, so far Masagana 150 is just a recommendation.
Yes.
Hindi pa siya, President Marcos hasn't greenlit it.
Yes, because we are working on the details, and the operational plan is very important, because even if we have the framework, the details on how it's going to be implemented will also mean specifying if there are certain budget allocations that would be needed, and at the same time, the timelines can be well defined. So right now, what we're working on, not only on Masagana 150, but all the other programs, when we talk about strengthening the existing programs, is an operational plan.
Okay. You spoke of irrigation, and irrigation nga was one of the major gaps that the last Agriculture Secretary pointed out. The NIA was always criticized, even Aquino time pa, for its low performance. Hindi siya nakapag-expand ng coverage of irrigation throughout the country. And one of the things that the Duterte administration did to solve that was to absorb the NIA within Malacanang. But that didn't work. Again, parang low performance of the NIA. So has President Marcos mentioned anything about NIA irrigation and a way to improve irrigation coverage?
Well, NIA now is under the Department of Agriculture. And during the last meeting, Yusek Benny Antiporda, which is the Deputy Administrator of NIA, was with us. So we didn't really discuss it at length, but that in itself was showed the importance of irrigation, because every time we talk of production, then you have to talk of, it's not just FMR, diba? It's irrigation as well. Because even when in Isabela, I was talking to Congressman Tony Pet, and he was telling me how important irrigation is. And it really spells a lot of difference as far as the yield of the farmers in a certain area is concerned. So that is definitely going to be pursued, even more discussions, and even, I think, a situational report on what the programs and the projects of NIA undertook.
Okay. Because in relation to that, President Marcos has been famous for his promise to bring the price of rice to 20 pesos per kilo. It's something that, when I interview people on the ground, diba, on the streets, that's the promise that really most sticks to their head. So, what are we doing, or do you think it's still a feasible promise na can we really bring down the price of rice to 20 pesos per kilo at this point?
We are working on it, because the idea is always, based on his marching order, is to also make agricultural commodities affordable for the consumer. So that's the affordability part.
But he's never mentioned the 20 peso figure in meetings.
No, we don't talk about the 20 peso figure, but we talk about bringing down the cost. So bringing down the cost will mean the production side, and also the distribution channels, the logistics side. So all the interventions that can be done to be able to have more affordable rice. Those are the things we are working on, and we will give recommendations. We are pencil pushing, and the cost structure now is something that is very important because we see how many margins along the way. When you talk of several layers of traders and how you eliminate them, you also have to take into consideration who are the legitimate members of the value chain, who cannot be eliminated. And if they cannot be eliminated, how can government probably give them something to be able to help them bring down the cost?
So did he ever float or suggest a timeline or a deadline for this goal of affordability, and what level would he consider affordable?
Affordability based on our buying power also. Plus, of course, we base it on how much our farmer, the farm gate price, even the trading post price, and then how much it's being sold in retail markets. Affordability will also mean, if we have sayote in Benguet trading post being sold at 8 pesos and it's being sold at 60 pesos here in Metro Manila, then we have to do something about it. So it's not only about rice, but all the other commodities, and it's working on food mobilization as well. So we have production, we have food mobilization, we have bringing in infrastructure, and if we have cold storage facilities strategically located where production areas are, then the shelf life of our commodities, which are highly perishable, if you extend the shelf life, then you can eventually have more stability as far as supply is concerned. And every time you have a stable supply, that will always lead to stable prices as far as retail.
But sir, but no mention of a deadline. Like dapat by the first half of his administration, nothing like that.
Catch-up plan, those are the things that's part of our catch-up plan that we intend to do within the year.
Within the year.
But infrastructure will take time.
Yeah.
So again, we are looking into what can be done within the year and what areas can we pour in interventions to be able to increase yield and at the same time bring down the cost for consumers.
Okay, so let's talk about sugar shortage now. The SRA mentioned that imports are already happening, diba? They greenlit certain importation for household use, but you also mentioned a new strategy of possibly imposing or implementing a suggested retail price. Where are we on that?
Well, for sugar, importation happened already, but it's for industrial use. These are for the manufacturing companies. No? Before, the domestic, it's the locally produced sugar that goes to the households. So now what we're doing with SRA is that we said we have to really define, when we talk about demand, you have to separate industrial from household. Because now that we're looking at a very low supply of sugar, that means augmentation through importation. We also have to make sure that should we import again, we have to secure a certain volume for our household consumptions. It's not just about domestic consumption, because if industrial eats up again a bulk of that importation, then people, when we buy in the palengke, it will still be expensive. But since that is a problem that has to be addressed, first the supply and the demand and the allocations for specific target buyers is very important. SRP is still being discussed because now we have to look into landed cost of sugar, because it could be SRP for imported sugar. Then we have to look into the logistics side. How much will it take for our importers to bring the sugar here if it's going to be for household consumptions? Remember, if it's industrial, it's in bulk. If it's retail, it's like 1 kilo, and that entails cost also when you do repacking. So SRP is being discussed. We will have a stakeholders meeting, because as part of the process, anytime you come up with an SRP, you have to have a stakeholders meeting first. And then we will give a recommendation. Again, SRP is different from price ceiling.
Yes.
So, but at least it will have, the consumers will have an idea on how much that price is. But making sure the supply is there,
Yeah.
I think is the first step. Even we put an SRP, because there's no point in putting an SRP if you don't have sugar in the market anyway.
When do you expect a recommendation to come out and an SRP to be implemented, if ever?
We are looking at next week, because we've had a series of small group meetings with different stakeholders, with the SRA itself. We have a technical working group, and we are looking at a schedule of a bigger stakeholders meeting, probably Tuesday of next week. Then from there, we will come up if SRP is going to be recommended.
Okay. One of my last few questions now, all about recommendation. One of them is about a recommendation before pa, like months, even administrations ago, to separate the BFAR from the DA, to make fisheries like a distinct department. I'm just wondering if President Marcos has weighed in on this, or are there recommendations from
Well,
the DA?
right now it hasn't been discussed, but we are looking always at the supply level as far as fisheries is concerned. What was discussed with regards to the fisheries is capacitating our fisher folks, because we were looking at the catch, if the catch of our fishers is enough to meet our demand, and why importation comes in. So those are the things, capacitating. We're looking at the programs of BFAR as well, if their distribution of small boats is still something we should continue, or we should shift to bigger boats. So those are, but again, it's more of situational report. This is the situation, these are the programs, and what is the impact that it is now from the point of view of our stakeholders.
Okay. President Marcos has always said that his taking on the role of Agriculture Secretary would be temporary. Do we have any indication that of when he plans to appoint a new secretary, and when this will happen?
Well, so far we do not know the timelines of the president with regards to that. That is not discussed during our meeting. So as of now, we have no information regarding that.
Okay. Is there anything that you can say, or what would you say is the biggest achievement, or at least biggest output that has come out of his first 30 days as Agriculture Secretary?
I think it's bringing in the stakeholders. It's very important to be consultative, to make sure that whatever programs we will continue and whatever programs we will launch will definitely help our stakeholders. That, I think, is very important, not only to the department, but to our beneficiaries as well. There are certain things that policies and programs might look nice as when you look, but during implementation, something goes wrong. Now, when you bring in your stakeholders, then you have a reality check on what's happening on the ground. And with that, we can easily, or at least we can tweak things and revise things faster to make sure that the objectives are being met. That's very important. So far during our meetings, we are encouraged to go towards the consultative direction to come up with programs that will be impactful.
And last question, what does these first 30 days, what does it say about the next few months that's ahead of us? How Marcos will lead the Agriculture Department in the next few months or years, especially given the urgency of the rising cost of food?
I think it is obvious that it's a priority. Agriculture is a priority, and that means it will not only benefit our producers, but it will also benefit our consumers as well. So there are things that we are looking at that will make, that's basically a multi-year plan, but there are also quick impact programs that we intend to strengthen. So there, I think things might happen faster than they used to, because there is more focus and there is a lot of attention. And we are also, like DILG Undersecretary met with me yesterday, and he told me that he was given instruction to look into the needs of agriculture. Because when we talk about engaging the LGUs, we've been talking to one mayor from another, but now I think the national government, even the fact that DILG sees the importance, will definitely make things move faster.
All right. Thank you so much, Yusek Evangelista, for your time. Very insightful, especially as we continue to watch the first 30 days and beyond of Secretary and concurrent Secretary, but President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pia.